So Emma's going to show us a technique for how she painted her box. You can do this many different ways. You could even use stickers or glue objects to your box to decorate it. But she made hers look like outer space. And she's starting off, and this is not the box, but we're demonstrating the painting technique on just a canvas. And so she's first coating it with black. And what are you doing there? Mixing a little purple in?
Yeah,
For what?
outer space.
Outer space? To give it a weird, spacey glow. Okay, to do the stars, she's going to take an old toothbrush with some white paint, massage it into the bristles a little bit, and then just using her thumb to make the bristles kind of flick the white paint. And make whatever star pattern you want. And again, this is just one painting technique. You can, of course, decorate it any way you like. Here's the box that Emma painted with that technique. And she's pointing out that once it dries, the stars become more vibrant. And your box comes with the hole already in it. I put that there. So I'm going to show you the speaker and a couple things about it first. This is the speaker that you're going to mount in there. And there's a couple parts of the speaker. So on the back is the magnet here. And then these are the connection terminals. And you'll notice that they are marked with, it's really hard to see, a little plus sign and a little minus sign for positive and negative connection. And then way down in there is kind of a dust cover for the voice coil. And out here is the dust cap for the voice coil and what we call the cone. You don't want to touch anything in here. The cone and the dust cap are very delicate and you can easily damage it. But here on the edge we have this little mounting isolator ring. That's what we're going to line it up with and glue it in place. So, open your box, Emma. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And then from the inside out, take your speaker. And you're going to notice, and you can pick it up and turn around and show the camera and whatnot, but you're going to put it facing out of the hole, but you're going to make sure that the connection terminals are up towards the opening where you can reach them, because you have to connect to that. Yes, just like that. And then you'll tuck it in the hole, and it's going to fit snugly, but you're going to want to get that little...
I can't get it in there.
Yeah, that little ring is going to go into the hole a little bit, and you'll have to work it around with fingers from all sides. You may want to turn it up like that, so you can kind of look in the end and work it around. And you'll get it to kind of pop in there, and you'll see from the back and the front side that it's evenly pressed in once you've got it. Okay, and take your hot glue gun and try to keep it in that position. I know it's awkward, but so that we can see. And put maybe 4 dabs of glue around it. So covering a little bit of the metal and the wood, but don't cover your connection terminals.
Right here?
Yep, that's good. And then kind of a little bit, don't get it inside the speaker. Yep. And then do it on the back side, reach over and drop a couple blobs.
I can't do it without seeing it.
Just lean in. There you go. And then a little bit on the, maybe around the way a little bit to the left and right. It's a squeaky glue gun. Okay, and then leave it there real still and I'll get in close and show that. So here's what we've done. We've just kind of blobbed a little glue on there, overlapping the metal and wood, being careful to stay away from getting in the speaker holes. And we'll let that cool until the speaker's solidly in there. Now it's a pretty big blob of glue, and it's gonna cool slowly. So give that some time. Go get a snack, and then we'll go back and pick up from there. Roll this thing. Okay. So we're going to put the switch in to control the power. There's the switch, way over here. There we go. So you'll notice on the back of the switch, it has 6 terminals. Focus camera. We're going to wind up using 4 of them, but this is what's known as a double pole, double throw switch. So it has two sections, or 2 poles, which is the center, and then the throws, which are the electricity can be switched one of 2 different directions. So we're going to control 2 different circuit boards in there with 2 different battery sources, one on each pole, and then we're going to turn it on the one side, and we're going to leave the other side empty. That's the off. So the way these little toggle switches work is there's a little pivot in here, and there's some metal pieces that rock back and forth. So when the switch is this way, it's pressing down, and this set up here is actually connected. So this one's connected to this one, and this one's connected to this one. These are disconnected. And then when you switch it this way, it reverses to the other way. So anyway, we're going to mount that in there. You're going to put it from the inside out with the rows. If tip your box up and show us with the rows, turn it 90 degrees now for me. Nope, the switch itself in the box. There you go. So that the rows are going up and down nice and straight like that. And then we're going to turn a little bit as we put it in, so we'll get that corrected in a minute. But then you're going to put the lock washer on and the nut, and start the nut onto the threads. Righty tighty. Oop, I went too far. There we go. And those can be a little tricky. The angle of the toggle throws you off. But once you get started, then you can use both sets of fingers, and you can rotate the switch a little bit, and then the nut, and work it against yourself to get it snugged up. You know what I'm saying? So the switch is easier to turn than the nut. So turn the switch around to tighten it. You got it tight?
I think so. Do you want to check it?
Okay. So we will just hold the nut, and we'll turn the switch, and then we'll turn them together, and then turn it back, and then you got it pretty snug. If you have a little pair of pliers, that's great. You can tighten this a little bit easier, but it doesn't take too much. And then from the inside, we'll put that down again. Let me get focused back on it. Okay. And then if you want to take your hot glue again and just put a little on each side so it can't ever come loose or rotate again. And that'll really secure it into position. Flip your lid open there so you can see. Okay. Let me see what you got there. We'll show it to. Okay, so we've just got the switch with some glue, and before it cools, I'm going to straighten it, that last little perfect touch. There we go. And we'll let that cool in there. And one last thing after that's cool enough to stay is there's a little protective rubber cap that screws on just the same way the nut did.
Oh, it's moving.
Yeah, you got to hold the switch because it's not cool in there yet. And then check your alignment again.
It's stuck to me.
Yeah, that looks good. It's pretty straight. And you got the. So we've got our on-off switch in place. Next, we will glue the battery holders in place. And for the one, we're going to want a battery. Here's one. Here's the batteries for the other one. Not that we want to put them in yet. All right. So, Emma, take your AAA battery holder and let's glue it right in this position here. Okay, so glue on the back, put it right there. A little tight in there, but that's all right. You can maybe move the batteries this way a little bit when you make yours. Give yourself a little more room to get those in, but it's okay. There. Don't get too far away from the end. Don't get too close. And in a minute, you'll see why it's important not to be too far away. So just put a little hot glue
Where do I put it?
right in there, just like that. There. Nope, a little farther down this way, closer to this end. Right there. Okay, just so you can get the batteries into it. That's all the space you need. So tip it up. Just there you go. Just tip it until the light goes in. There you go. Just like that. Okay. Beautiful. Now take your 9-volt battery holder and put it on your 9-volt battery. But be careful not to touch the wires together. So you might want to twist those or tape them funny so they don't touch. You know what I mean? Just do one of these. You don't want these touching while the battery's on there. So we're just going to do that. And that'll keep them out of trouble. Okay, so clip it on your battery.
Like this?
Take a look at it. Make sure you got the right inside-outside thing. See how one's fat and goes outside and one goes... Yeah, they're the same terminals. They're just reversed. Snap it on tight. There you go. Now, turn it upside down on its head. Yep. Face the wires away from you. Yep. And then you're going to put glue on the bottom of the holder, just the black part of the holder, not the battery. And then you're going to stick it right down here next to it. So it's going to wind up like this. Just like that. So we're just going to glue it to the bottom. So the battery can be changed, but it's nice and in there on the same side. Just put a big old glob on there and then stick it down quick. Hold that for a few minutes. Let that set pretty good because we're going to try to get the battery back off of it then so we don't have a live battery to work with our rest of our situation. And then we'll keep building stuff. So while that cools, we're going to move on to I'm going to give you a little intro on the 2 circuit boards that we have, and I'm trying to see the camera and see the parts. So you've got this little plug arrangement that I sent. This is kind of being repurposed from a different thing. This is actually for a floppy drive in older desktop computers. And so the wire colors are going to be wrong, and we're not going to worry about that. But we'll figure out where they go. So this is the amplifier circuit. So it's got a level control here for the amount of gain, which is the amount that it increases the signal. Your speaker will connect to these screw terminals, and the other 4 are these little pins on this end. So if we look real close, let me see if I can get a good enough shot of this, where it'll actually focus on it. Okay, well, we'll just talk about them. You can see. So you can see if we hold it this way with the green thing up and the pins down, from left to right, this first one, wish you could see it better, but it says VCC. VCC stands for Voltage Collector Collector. And if you look at the discrete components that are inside of an IC chip, you'll see 2 transistors gang together in series. And the power, the positive DC power is fed into the collectors of both. So that's where they came up with that term in TTL logic way back decades ago, that VCC was basically your power in, or voltage collector collector. And the emitter is where the power would come out after it was switched. So the next pin says in. So that's our audio signal in to the amplifier. And the next one is ground, and the next one is ground. So there's a ground for the audio, and there's a ground for the power. If you look on the back, and again, you're not going to see it too well in this camera shot, but you'll notice that the grounds are actually tied together. It's the same ground. They just give you another pin in case it hooks someplace else, someplace differently on the other end of your circuit. So with that, we've got a quick thing to do first. So if we line this up with the little notch things there so that it fits on here, you wind up with it like that. So again, left to right with this, your red, black, black, yellow. So in this case, our red actually turns out to be right is VCC, that's power. That one's okay. Ground shouldn't be yellow, it should be black. One of the grounds is black, and then this in is the black wire right after the red one. So we're going to do a thing with this because of where it has to go on this other circuit board. So we'll talk about that quickly. So this is our Bluetooth circuit board. This is actually the antenna you can see on there. And then you've got your pins for hooking it up. And there's actually an aux jack on it as well, if you want to use that. So on this side we have 3 pins. One is labeled VBAT, one is labeled 5 volts, 5V, and one is labeled ground. So we've got a battery holder to power this, so we're just going to put, it's misleading, VBAT means a rechargeable battery that you might attach to it. But we're going to use the 5 volts, which is the same as would be wired to this little micro USB connector that's also on it. So we're going to use the ground and the 5 volt to get power. And on this side you have left, right, and ground. So we have a mono amplifier and a single speaker. So we're going to need to tie left and right together. So when this sends a stereo signal, that both the left and the right get mixed together and go into the amplifier and go to the speaker. So to do that, that's going to be our in wire, or this second wire, the first black one. And we're going to take one of your supplied scraps of Cat5 innards. So I just used you can do this with a lot of things. We didn't include every single possible tool you need, but these are common household things. If you have a crummy old so you can strip these little Cat5s pretty easily. I literally just did it with my thumbnail. Just dig into it with my thumbnail. Might take a couple tries. You do that and you can strip the wire bare. If you want to use an old crummy knife, that's great. If you've got a pair of wire cutters, you can drag it off, or if you've got an actual wire stripper, great. And then I've got a little pair of wire cutters. Again, this stuff's easy to cut. A crummy old beat up pair of scissors will cut it easily. Don't use your mom or dad's really good scissors and make them mad. Use a crummy old pair, or a pair of pliers that'll have a little cutter. And then cut off a piece of this wire that's maybe, I don't know, as long as my finger is wide. Not very long. Little stub of wire. We're going to bend it into a U. So there, see, we have a little, I'll hold it with this so you can see it better. We've got a little U-shaped piece of wire. So then, take our little U-shaped piece of wire and our second wire, or first black wire, and we're going to put that through the U and bend it around it until it's hanging on there good, like that. You can kind of see it there. Get that box behind it for a background. Okay, and then Emma's going to hold the solder up here in the camera so I can try to do this so you can see it right there. Nope, right there. And I've got the soldering iron, and we're going to tin our tip a little bit so it's ready to go. This one actually needs to be cleaned pretty bad. Okay. Now, we take and we apply a little bit of heat and a little bit of solder. Let's get a little bit better joint there. Okay, so now we have soldered that little loop on there. So if you've never soldered before, this will be tricky, and you can take some of the scraps of wire that we provided and a little bit of solder and practice. But the idea is there's 2 or 3 things that work here. You apply the heat to the thing you're trying to solder, not to the solder. You can sit and melt solder off the end of the roll all day long. It doesn't going to make any joint. You have to get the wire clean, prepared, and ready to solder. I'm going to try to do this by zooming in on a spot. That little triangle right in front of us. At this point of that triangle. Yep, okay. So I'm going to I'm going to do it right there. So then you want to put your wires together and make a good mechanical connection first. So that means twist them or bend them or get them stuck together. And then you want to apply the heat to the wires. And you got to be ready with the solder. You also have to have a tip that's ready to be. So if your iron's brand new, you want to tin the tip. You want to melt a little solder right onto the tip till it's shiny. And then you can just take a wet rag or a wet sponge, not your mom's good dishcloth, and wipe it off so you don't have any extra. And then you're going to heat the wires and you're going to apply the solder. And you'll see it flow. And it's really going to be hard to see on camera, but you'll see that all of a sudden the solder kind of goes and flows right into the things. And then you get a good shiny joint. If you wiggle this while it's cooling, it's going to get not shiny. It's going to get dull and textured, and that's what we call a cold solder joint. So then you just want to reheat it again and let it cool. But with electronics, I'm going to go refocus the camera here again quick. If you got one of our soldering irons as an add-on, they have a temperature control, or if you have a temperature controlled iron of your own, it doesn't need to be very high for this. You know, this one's a little less than halfway up. It has some temperature numbers on it. I'm not sure how accurate they are, but I've got it turned down so that you don't get that kind of instantly crusty tip that doesn't work. You just have to be warm enough to melt the solder. If you were soldering something large and you needed more heat, that'd be a different thing. So now we've got our wires prepared to make the interface between the two circuit boards. So we've got our in that we fixed, that's going to be left and right, and then we've got our ground that goes with it. So we come back over here to our left right ground, and we're going to put the two legs of our little U-shaped thing through those two holes. Oh, I know what I was going to say earlier. It's going to come up right now. And then we're going to take our ground and get it poked through that last hole like that. So now, spread those out so they kind of stay. And there we go. We've got it hooked up like that. And I'm going to take this down, put it on the table and solder. This is the part with soldering where you have to be careful. When you're soldering on one of these small circuit boards, too much heat can ruin it very quickly. So, to not have too much heat, what you have to do is accomplish the goal quickly. And if you don't succeed the first time quickly enough, then you need to take a little break and let it cool down before you go back. Don't just keep cooking it because you're going to ruin the circuit board. So there we go. There's my first one. And then I'm going to give it a little break. I'm just going to make sure that's in there good. Okay. And then we'll go to the left, right, and we'll do them. And you just watch for that little flow to happen when it's ready. Oh boy. See, now here's a case where it's being stubborn because there's so much stuff close to it. So we'll give it a little break, blow on it a little bit, and we come back in. There we go, I got the wire. And I got the circuit board. So now you can see it flowed around this donut and that wire. And then we're going to do it again to this left channel. Give it a little break because it's being really stubborn. There we go. Okay. So there's those 3 pins all soldered up and ready to go. Yep, looks good. If you've got any little stray wires sticking out or anywhere, grab whatever you can, even an old crummy nail clipper, not your parents' good nail clipper, and just get rid of them so they don't touch anything. And if you have one of these nice little pairs of close cutting, what they call nippy cutters, You can take off the little extra stubs. If you don't, doesn't make any difference. Sticks down a little bit. But we're not trying to fit this into a microsurgical case, so it doesn't matter. So there we go. So now we've got our two circuit boards connected to each other. And then we're going to solder a couple more things real easily. Here we're going to grab one of our little sets of wire that we sent, or as I said, torn apart Cat 5 cables. And I'm just going to untwirl both ends a little bit. So I have that. I'm going to strip both ends a little bit. And again, you can do this with whatever. You can pocket knife, crummy old beat up pair of scissors, your thumbnail if you want. And then we're going to do what's called tinning, at least two of these. So that is to put some solder on the wire so it's more ready to solder quickly to another component. So there we go. Get that tip going. Put the heat on the wire, put the solder on the other side. And they turn silver when they're tinned. I'm going to do both ends. One end I'm going to make sure I get all the excess off. So you got to be working in an area where you can make a little bit of a mess for this. You don't want a tabletop you're going to ruin or anything like that. And we'll put down an old crummy piece of plywood or something, because when you go to clean these off, heat them up and just kind of flick it off, and you'll get rid of any extra so that we can still get it through the holes in that circuit board. Actually, this goes into the screw terminal, so it doesn't matter, but we'll do that later with some other wires. So then we're going to come to our speaker, and we're going to tin the two little loop terminals. Now, you don't want to be on these inner ones where the speaker is hooked up. That's the solder that goes to the speaker, to the cone that moves to the voice coil. We're going to go on these little open loop ears out here, and they should tin up pretty quick. And you're going to close them up with solder, just like that. Because then it's going to be easy. We're going to take our tinned wires, and we've got one that's like white with a stripe of color, and we've got one that's a solid color. And it might be green, it might be brown, it might be blue, or it might be orange. Doesn't matter. We're going to take the solid color and make that the positive. If you look at your speaker this way, you'll see that the terminal on the right, when he's facing down, is positive, and the terminal on the left is negative. So what that relates to is a speaker is a electromagnetic coil and a fixed permanent magnet. And when you put an audio signal or a little bit of electricity to it, when the signal goes positive over here, it pushes the cone out. And when the signal goes negative over here, it pulls the cone in. So that relates to the sound wave, positive, negative, positive, negative. So that helps you, if you have multiple speakers doing the same sound in a situation where they're all connected together, they have to be working the same, or your sound will cancel itself, do some weird things. So we're going to take the solid colored wire, whatever color it is. This one's green and white with green. We're going to put the solid green in the positive terminal and just heat it up quick and stick it through just like that. Heat the other end up quick and stick it through just like that. So you wind up with the wires through the speaker terminals. So there we go. All right, now we're going to go back to this. We're going to separate the battery wires, and we're going to pop this battery off of that holder that we glued down so we're not having the live batteries while we mess with things. Flip this around. Now we put our switch in here, and I think we talked a little bit about which way the switch goes and how it works inside, where it tips this way and it pushes on the contacts on that side, and when it tips this way, it pushes on the contacts on this upward side. So we want this to be on and this to be off. So with that, we want to use the two sets of bottom terminals. Now this is a double pole, double throw switch. We're going to use 4 of the 6 pins. The center 2 are the poles, these guys. So we're going to use one pole for one set of batteries and one pole for the other set of batteries. And then we're going to use these bottom terminals for our device output. So we're going to tin the bottom 4 terminals of the switch. A little solder, you just kind of get it to stick to it and fill the hole. And again, this is a plastic bodied switch with solder lugs, so be quick. If you don't get it just right or it doesn't take right away the first time, take a break, clean your tip, and go back again when it's cooled down a little bit. Then we're going to take our battery wires. They are actually slightly pre-tinned, but we're going to add a little bit so that we don't get any argument from that. So we got fresh flux on there. Flux is a chemical that helps to clean the metal and remove corrosion even if it's invisible. Okay, so we're going to take our AAA battery holder, or triple AA battery holder, our 3 holder of AA battery. That's really confusing. And we're going to hook it to this terminal closest to it. Just like that. So that's that one. And we're going to take our 9-volt battery holder positive, and we're going to hook it to the other pole over here. There we go. Now we got to keep that straight as we go forward. And then we're going to take a couple more little scraps of wire. Doesn't matter which ones. I'm going to do different colors so it's not as confusing. So we've got our 2 circuit boards to power, and we talked about earlier that this one is ready for 5 volts. So 3 AA cells at 1.5 volts apiece, and they float just a little higher than 1.5 actually when they're fresh, and then they go a little bit lower when they're dying. Equals what in series? Anybody? Wait, I can't hear you. Okay, 4.5 volts. So 3 times 1.5 in series is 4.5 volts, because when you put them in series, the voltages add up, and the amount of capacity or current stays the same as one cell. If you were to parallel them, then your capacity and current would go up and your voltage would remain 1.5. But we've seriesed them. That's what these little battery holders do. So we have 4.5 volts. This one's 5. Close enough. There's a kind of a tolerance and everything, and that's going to get us through it. This one wants, I forget, these have a wide range. They're LM386 chips. It's a really common amplifier chip, and I think they run like 4 to 16 volts or something like that. 12 is a good target, but 9's adequate. It needed to be a little more than the 4.5, so it must be, maybe it's 6 through 16 or something like that. But anyway, 9 is a good target for that. So we're going to use the 9 volts to feed this into the VCC and then the ground. So we can tin up our 4th yellow wire that's our other ground, which is your power ground, so to speak. And we're going to get that ready to solder. And the 9-volt negative we tinned. So then we're just going to put them together. So the negative side of our 9-volt battery is connected to the power ground of this circuit. And then, if we do this right, I think we can actually, no, I want that on that end. So I am going to use these little extender wires. So then I took and made a couple of these, just another couple of these little scraps of wire. Strip both ends. Tin these up. Can't tin them with a hot glue gun. That's not going to work. Okay. So we tin these both ends of this up. And that's going to go to our first wire, the VCC, or voltage collector. So I'm going to tin that one up. And then we'll solder it on there. Okay, so for power supply to this circuit board, we have VCC or plus, and ground way over here is minus, and the minus is connected to the minus side of our 9-volt battery, and the plus side is going to connect to the bottom switch terminal on the same side that the 9-volt battery was wired to. So that gives us a complete circuit on the 9-volt side, where we've created a circle. Negative, positive. When the switch goes on, these two are connected. It feeds into here. The switch is off, that breaks, and this turns off. For the other circuit board, get another scrap of wire for a positive. And again, just tin the ends up so they're easier to work with. One of these does have to go through the little hole in the circuit board, so we're going to flick off any extra crumbs of solder we got there. And we've got this as our negative. So again, over here we had, kind of looking at it this way, ground, 5 volts, and this VBAT for the rechargeable battery. So the ground, we're going to put our negative wire from the AA holder through that. Get it to stay there. That could be a trick. And sometimes when you're soldering circuits, unless you've got some really handy little things to clip and hold things, you wind up using your fingers in interesting ways to hold 5 things at once. But we're going to get that to just sit there just right. And there. Get that to solder. And then take a good close look after you've soldered your stuff. These little holes in these little circuit boards like this are very close together. Make sure that you didn't bridge across them. If you did, get in there with your iron carefully and melt and flick the solder away, and you'll solve that. And then so we'll go to the 5-volt hole, which is the second one. We're going to stick our little scrap of wire in there and try to make it stay. So I'm going to set it down in the lid like that, and then I'm going to bend it this way so it doesn't get in trouble. And then I'm going to try to solder that one in real quick. There we go. Okay. Oops, I didn't get a very good job there. I can still see the copper of the little donut around the circuit board hole, so I know I didn't get it. Okay, here we go. We got that. And you probably figured it out, and you're way ahead of me, but that power wire is then going to go on the bottom side of the switch on the AA battery holder side, or the 4.5-volt supply. And there we go. All right. So now we got 2 exposed bare joints here. We're going to deal with those. They need to be kept away from other things and insulated so they don't touch anything and cause a problem. But we're going to do that in kind of a unique way. We've got this little loop of positive wire here in the battery holder by the switch. We're just going to push it down the corner. And again, we'll deal with that in a minute. But we've only got a couple things to hook up yet. And we've got our little screwdriver. We're going to open up these terminals on the amplifier. So when you turn those counterclockwise, it opens these holes. And then you've got your speaker. We have these 2 wires re-prepared. So that's our positive, the solid colored wire. The one with the white is our negative. And if we look on this, behind it, very hard to see behind here, it says out and ground. So out is our positive, ground is our negative. So we're going to put our white wire in the little slot for the negative. Make sure it gets in that little hole between the metal, and hold it in there and tighten the screw down. And you don't have to go crazy tight, but you want to be, snugged, and then make sure it's stuck. And then the positive will go in the one that says out. And that one's tightened up. Okay, now I'm going to stand up, and Emma's going to come back, and she is going to glue these circuit boards in a nice or neat fashion somehow here. Probably bend them like this, flip these around this way, and then we're going to glue them on this side of the box with a little hot glue right on the back of them. So I'm going to let her do that, and then I'll talk to you while she's doing that. All right, so you're going to go ahead and glue those circuit boards in, Emma.
Where?
Put a little bit on the back of the circuit board.
This?
Yep, the 2 circuit boards. And then this one's on the speaker, and so I would just put it here close to the speaker, kind of like that. And I'd put this one kind of over there. Make sure you don't get any wires behind them, because
What if it touches the knobs?
we got to deal with that. What?
If it touches the silver things?
It's okay if it touches the silver things. Now, when you glue these in, don't put a ton. Just put like 2 big blobs that'll squish out, and make sure that so that it sticks there. That's plenty. The thing of it is, set your glue. There you go. So you got your hand, set your glue gun down, and now hold it in. Put your finger right in the middle of that circuit board and push it back. So if we have to work on this or anything ever goes wonky, you got to be able to kind
I
of
can't hold it in.
pop those loose
Can you position it?
so that you can work on it. And so for that reason, you don't want to get too crazy with the glue, so that you don't want to have to mutilate the circuit board to get it back out. No matter the temptation, don't stick your finger in the hot glue after you to spread it. That's not a good idea. Turns out really bad. And on this kind of stuff, it does seem, for whatever reason, to take kind of a long time for it to cool. So you have to hold it for a little bit. All right, so that one's sticking pretty good there now. Now, Emma, go ahead and put a little glue on the back of the other circuit board, which is your Bluetooth, and push it against the wall there. There's one big circle blob right there. Don't try to spread it all out. Just make a blob.
I wasn't trying to.
Okay. And get that to stick.
It won't stick.
Well, it's got to cool a little bit for it to stick.
Like I'm saying, it's uneven.
Well, maybe you got to do a bigger blob. Like, well, you're getting it to stick a little bit, but just put a poop. There you go. Now push your finger right up in there gently and hold that. There you go. All right. We're going to let that cool a little bit. Okay. So now you're going to deal with your extra splices of wire, and all we're going to do is get them someplace safe and glue them down. So in this case, all these wires can kind of just get pushed down out of the way. There's one of our splices on that yellow to black, and we're going to get it so it lays right on the floor of the box, and we're just going to drip some hot glue over it like a blob, and that's going to hold that wire, keep it out of trouble. Get this negative wire tucked away so we've got room for this one, and then this one we'll just bring over here again, put a little blob on it. This is not really, there we go. There we go. Okay. You have your phone on you?
Over there? Why?
Okay, why don't you grab it?
For what?
Okay. Once that's kind of everything's getting stuck, keep the wires out of the way. Just kind of, this is what we call dressing the wires. Just dress the wires back nicely so they're not in any trouble. And you can use glue as needed. So we're going to put a little, I'm just going to put a little blob on these wires as they go past the switch so they don't get around in trouble. Put a little bit, that one I tucked in the corner. A little bit over those by the battery holder. Alright. Bend these speaker wires back so they don't get bumped around. Now, before we go any further, we want to make sure our switch is turned off or down. Then you can reconnect the battery. The 9-volt sits on its little holder, clicks into place. 3 AA's, just like everything else. The negative or flat end goes against the spring. And then you push the front of it down in. All 3 of those. Can get a little tight in there, but that's all right. You can maybe move the batteries this way a little bit when you make yours, give yourself a little more room to get those in, but it's okay. All right, Emma, fire up your phone. get to your Bluetooth section, turn on your Bluetooth, and go, are you ready to search for Bluetooth?
How do you search?
I don't know. Is it just,
Doesn't-
yeah, it's looking. Okay. So we're going to turn on our switch. Our lights start to come on inside. And let's see if something pops up on Emma's phone. Show the screen to the screen. Here, down. Oh, down. There, you're way down there. And let's see if something shows up. HW audio. I bet that's it. Look at that. Now play some music for us.
From like what?
Anything.
I don't have YouTube on here yet.
Anything. She's got a brand new phone. So we'll see what comes up. There we go. We have ourselves a working Bluetooth speaker. So turn up your volume. I'm pretty good on your phone there. Whoa, okay, down a touch. It's kind of overdriving. Now, let's take our screwdriver and look at this little volume thing we had here. And we can see if we need to make any adjustment. And I think it actually works backwards on these little amplifiers. But if you need to tweak the amount of gain, you can do that with this little white turny thing on the blue potentiometer. There we go. Now you're ready to jam. And you can close the lid, and it gets even louder as the audio is allowed to resonate without the air from the cone going around from the inside to the outside and canceling itself. It's weird, playing some weird music there.
It's aesthetic.
Let's see. Okay.
1 hour aesthetic music.
Okay, let's turn that off. There we go. And when you're done playing with it, you can just turn it off. And you're all set. I hope you had fun with that.